How's it going, everybody? It's Riley's Redzone here to present you the second episode of Redzone's roster previews. Now, today we're talking about the New York Jets, who I have ranked number 31 in the NFL. That means they're my second worst ranked team. So as a quick recap, in case you missed the last one, I'm going to talk about every position, every player, whether I think they'll make the team, whether I think they'll be cut, or if they make the practice squad. Then we're going to look at their schedule and predict how many games they'll win. And then I'll give out some awards for the team of players that I think will succeed. And then we'll wrap up the video. So let's just get right into it. The Jets are pretty straightforward. You know, they don't have any controversies going on or anything like that that might affect who plays for their team. So looking at their culture overall and their coaching staff, I absolutely love what they have. I will talk about it numerous times in this video. They are heading in the right direction. I don't think right now they're ready to make a playoff push, but give them even a year, but 2 years, and I think you're talking about a playoff team, if not a Super Bowl contending team. Because to go out and get Robert Saleh and then get Mike LaFleur were great moves. Because San Francisco, remember, just made it to the Super Bowl 2 years ago. So they still are very, very good. And I think that this team in a number of years could be at that level. So great job. You know, they have a defensive head coach and a good offensive mind. So let's get into talking about the players. So Zach Wilson, they took him number 2 overall in this year's draft. He is a very, very good player. Almost as good as Trevor Lawrence. I think he almost has no flaws. I mean, this dude has a rocket arm, can make some great plays outside the pocket. He has so much zip on the ball, a lot more mobile than Sam Darnold has been for this team, if we're kind of comparing their old QB situation to what it is now. He, I think, will be able to run this offense better than Sam did, which makes sense. Not that Sam is not a great quarterback, because I still think he has the potential to be. But when we're looking at this specific offense, Zach Wilson will fit this scheme much better. Then behind him, they have James Morgan, who I didn't love the pick last year. They took him in the 4th round above some other guys. Never really liked the pick. I don't think he's ever going to develop into a starting quarterback, even that alone, but he'll be an okay backup. But he'll never, to me, be a starting quarterback, at least a good one. Then you have Mike White, who I don't know how he's still in the league. It feels like he's been a free agent for 10 years. But he did get some time on the active roster last year. But I think I have him as the practice squad this year because I think it's his last year of practice squad eligibility. So I guess he is the most experienced out of anybody on this team at the quarterback position. But overall, you're looking good with Zach Wilson. You have a future in place, which is something a lot of teams can't say. And then behind him, not so much. I'll say it again. Zach Wilson will be really, really good in this offense. He'll be a strong spot. I just don't think the supporting cast is quite there yet to make a deep playoff run. But he will be very, very good for this team. Then looking at the running back position. They are going by committee, and I don't love it when teams do that. I just don't like that approach. Now, I understand you need some good depth, because looking at some of the top running backs in the league, Derrick Henry is a man in his own, but like Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon, they have all dealt with some injuries at some point. When you give a guy the ball that much, you're going to eventually run into some problems. So it's good to have some depth. But I don't like it when teams like this have kind of a committee. Now, I will say in a matter of years, I think you have a top duo here. But at the moment, they have a 3-headed monster, which is fine, but none of them are elite right now. Because LaMichael Pirine is pretty good, but he's not something special to me. He didn't really get that much time as a rookie last year, so I'm glad he will this year. He'll get to prove something. But I don't know how much this regime's going to like him because they brought in 2 other guys. They brought in Tevin Coleman from San Francisco. That makes sense, the whole connection there. So that's good, I guess. I don't think he's pretty quick still, Tevin Coleman. He'll be good on the stretch, probably good out the backfield. But he's not a great running back anymore. He never has been a number 1 player. Then Michael Carter, who they picked out of North Carolina this year, was a really good choice. I thought that was great value when they got him. He started slipping in the draft. But once again, I just don't know how much playing time he's going to get right away when you have P. Ryan and Coleman. I don't know who they're going to like the most. Personally, I like Michael Carter the best out of those 3. I would be giving him the ball as soon as possible. But I don't think that's the route the Jets are going to go. For fantasy purposes, you probably want to avoid the Jets running backs. But this room, in a matter of 2 years, you could have a really good duo with Carter and P. Ryan. But at the moment, they just need a little bit more time. The other theme, besides Zach Wilson being good in this video, will definitely be that this team, in a matter of years, could be really good. But right now, just need a little more time. Ty Johnson, I think, is a pretty underrated player. He offers some great skills in the receiving game, the pass game. He stepped in here last year and played pretty well. And then behind him, you have Josh Adams, who I've always thought has been really good. Surprised he went undrafted, but he has not done a whole ton in his career. So I just don't see him fitting in here anymore. And then Austin Walter, they brought in from San Francisco. He could be a special teamer. Same thing, I just don't see a spot for him at the moment. But it was smart of them to bring him in. So that's a pretty good depth overall as a room, but they just don't have a star player yet, as I said. Could develop, though. So you're looking decent there at the running back position. Not great, though. Then at wide receiver, this is a very, once again, depth-filled position. Once again, in a matter of 2 years or 3 years, you're looking at maybe one of the best wide receiver trios. But at this very, very moment, they are a bunch of young players who have not proven a whole ton besides a few of these guys. Most of them are pretty young. Let's start with Corey Davis. That's actually a signed jersey back there. But they bring him in from the Titans. They paid him a lot of money. And to be honest, he has only really had 1 year of success, and that was as a number 2 receiver. He's had A.J. Brown for a majority of it. He kind of has been a bust, but he has shown some potential. I've always been a fan of Corey Davis. But he's not ever proven to be a number 1 receiver. Now, he might not need to be if Mims or Elijah Moore can develop into a number 1 receiver. But at this very moment, he needs to be. They're paying him like one. And I just don't know if he's at that level yet, but he's pretty good. They have him for, I think it was a 3-year deal. So he's going to be under contract for a while. So he'll be there, which is good to see, I guess. And then Denzel Mims, I think, will really take a step up this year. Loved him out of Baylor last year. I think they got him at a good value. I was never quite there to where he should have been early first. I thought he was a late first, early second guy. They got him at a good value. He could really develop this year into a good player. So I think that's overall a pretty good room with those 2. Not the best ever, though. You need to see a little bit more out of him this year, and I think they'll start to get that. The pretty much only veteran in this group is Jamison Crowder. I think Jamison Crowder is still very, very good. I think he had a little bit of dispute maybe about contract because he's been a baller for this team. He's balled out for Washington as well. He plays really well. He's a slot guy, small guy, quick, makes a lot of great yards after catch. I think he's going to be a security blanket for this team, considering I'll talk about in a moment, this team does not have a great tight end room. I think he might be a go-to target this year for Zach Wilson. I do think he's getting up there in age, though, so they might look to move on, considering who else they have on the team, as I'll talk about. But right now, I think Jamison Crowder is a really good player. Elijah Moore, though. Let me talk about him for a minute. He was my number 12 overall player in this class. They got 3 of, I think it ended up being my top 20, but Vera Tucker was right on the outside of that. I think it was right in there or right outside. So call it top 20. They had 3 of my top 20 players. So Elijah Moore is a smaller guy for sure, but People think he can only play in the slot, and that's not true at all. He can play outside. I do think he will play in the slot here once Crowder is gone. So I think Elijah Moore is an absolute stud. But the question is, where does he fit in? This year, I don't know how much playing time he gets. But next year, looking in the future, if you can have a future receiver duo of trio, with Corey Davis, Denzel Mims, and Elijah Moore, you're looking really, really good. Combine that with Michael Carter, Michael P. Ryan, and Zach Wilson, you have a beautiful core of the future for your skill positions. At this very moment, once again, don't know how good they are, but in 2-3 years, this team is going to be really good. Keelan Cole was also a very good signing out of Jacksonville. I always thought he was a pretty underrated player. Same thing, I just don't know how much playing time he's going to get, but he is very good, and I think he could still be, a top 3 target for a team. He's not going to be for the Jets, though, this year. And then Vincent Smith, a quick guy, has made some great plays for both the Texans and the Jets. He's a good underrated player there. I think he barely makes the team. Below him, you have Braxton Berrios, who they brought in from New England. He is kind of that low-budget Julian Edelman slot guy. Nothing spectacular, so I think he's going to be cut. Josh Malone, I've never been a huge fan of. I think he can also be cut as well. Then Jeff Smith, I think an underrated receiver. He is still practice squad eligible, so I have him going there to the practice squad. Then you have DJ Montgomery, who is okay. I personally like Lawrence Cager as well. It's a battle between those two to get the other practice squad spot. And then below him, you have Manasa Bailey and Matt Cole. So, a lot of players here. It's very top heavy. You have some great, first 5 might be all around. They don't have an absolute stud receiver yet. But right now, as a depth player, they have 5 guys who I all think could be top 3 targets in an offense right now. Now, none of them are number 1 targets right now is the thing, but definitely a pretty good receiver room overall there. We're talking about tight ends here. It's not a great room. This is our first real weak spot. We've been waiting for Chris Herndon for 5 years, it feels like at this point. Every year we wait for him to step up, and then he gets suspended or injured. I don't know, we're just waiting for him. I still believe this is my last year. I'm going to say I've been believing in Chris Herndon for a while. This is my last year I'm going to give on. I think it'll be the last year for the Jets as well. He just has not done much for them. So this is a make or break it year. Never been a huge Ryan Griffin guy. I think he's a fine 2 or 3 tight end. So I guess that's okay. Decent as a backup. Tyler Kroft for a 3 is really, really good. Same thing. I thought he's always been a little overrated, but as a 3, you'll take that for sure. So it's a good depth. They don't have a star tight end at all, though, let alone maybe even a starting caliber. With Herndon, his potential at this point is basically a starting caliber tight end. And then Trayvon Wesco has kind of been a disappointment. Didn't love the pick when it happened. Still don't. I think they picked him. It was the 3rd or 4th round out of West Virginia. He was kind of a fullback, I'd say mostly, but a fullback, tight end, running back hybrid. Hasn't really worked out. I think this year would be his last year of practice squad eligibility, so I have him going there for this year. Never been a Daniel Brown guy either. I think that he is definitely a cut candidate there as well. I did like Kenny Yeboah, though, signing him out of Ole Miss. He might even beat out Wesco for a practice squad spot. I think he could be really good in the future. So, good depth there, bringing him in. So, this is just not overall a great tight end room, to be honest. Even if Herndon develops, you're looking to move on from him and get some better tight end depth in the future. So, now let's talk about the offensive line. It's interesting. They have a lot of good players and a lot of weaknesses. So I'd say offensive line was one of the biggest weaknesses with Sam Darnold. And you're kind of seeing it again here. Looking at the offensive tackles, you got Mekhi Becton. You picked him in the 1st round last year. He performed very, very well. They got him at a good value, and he's a stud left tackle. So if we're looking at the positions here, lock left tackle in. You're good to go. Great player. George Fant, on the other hand, never really been a stud player. I think they way overpaid him. Still think so, but a few years ago when they signed him from Seattle, they overpaid him badly to be a starting tackle. He kind of was a fill-in guy in Seattle, so I don't know why they paid him that much money. So that's a weakness at right tackle. Hey guys, it's Riley's Red Zone from the future, and I just quick want to say that it sounds like the Jets are in negotiations with Morgan Moses, who would be a really big upgrade for them at right tackle. As I said, George Fant is not a good starting quality tackle, so it would be a huge upgrade for them if this happens. It sounds like they're close. I don't know if it's going to get done for sure, but if it does happen shortly after this video is released, just know that would be a huge upgrade for the offensive line. So back to the video. Cameron Clark, who I think was at Charlotte last year, was a little bit of an early choice to me. He'll be a fine swing tackle, third guy. I don't think he's ever going to be anything great, though. And then Chuma Adoga out of USC a few years ago. Same thing. I just don't think he's that great. He has not really developed, so I don't know how much longer he's really going to be in the picture. But then behind him, they have a few guys that I just don't think are NFL caliber either, between Grant Hermans and Teton Saltis. So I think that you have Becton for tackle. And that's about it. That's all you got. You're hoping you might have some depth behind him, but I really don't love this tackle room at all. Then let's take a look at the guards. So you bring in Elijah Vera-Tucker. So I liked Elijah Vera-Tucker. He played both guard and tackle at USC. So I like the position flexibility of that. Ignoring them giving up resources to get him at 14. 14 is an okay spot. I thought he was going to be a steal for a team that got him between pick like 17 and 23. But he ended up going earlier than that, which shocked me a little bit. So I didn't love them giving up resources to go get him, but overall he'll be a good player. So if we're looking once again at the line here, left tackle's great, left guard is great. Right tackle, a little bit of a question. Right guard, also a little bit of a question because I'm not a huge Greg Van Roten fan. He's fine. He is the definition of a just middle of the ground guard. He's a starting caliber player, never going to be elite though. So he's fine, I guess. And then Alex Lewis, I've always liked, but they recently restructured his contract, so I do think he is on the way out slowly. But he is a good swing guard. I did love them bringing in Dan Feeney from Chargers because he can play guard and center, which I'll talk about in a bit. But their center depth behind their starter is not very good. So I think that he could fill in as a backup center as well. So those are, once again, it's another position where they have a lot of depth. I don't think Vera-Tucker is ever going to be an absolute stud. I think he's going to be a really solid starting guard, though, for you. So behind them, I just don't love what they have behind them. Connor McDermott started as a tackle, hasn't really done much for anybody. I like Corey Levin. I just don't see where he fits in at this point. Parker Ferguson was recently put on injured reserve. I originally had him on the practice squad, but because he's on injured reserve, he won't count towards the roster. And then you have Tristan Hoge, who I'm making the practice squad. So a good fill of depth, but once again, just not a whole ton of top-heavy players there. But Vera-Tucker will be a part of their future. Then looking at center, you have a good player in Connor McGovern. They gave him a big contract, and he's performed up to it. He's pretty good. Then below him, though, I just don't think Jimmy Murray is an NFL-level center, personally. So that's why I have Feeney making the team, so he can fill in there. So, McGovern is fine. So then, once again, we're looking at the line. Basically, your middle and left is good. But then the right side needs to figure it out. So I don't love their offensive line as a whole, which is a concern because that's what perhaps their biggest problem has been for the past few years. So they're getting somewhere. They just need a little bit more time, I think. So you're looking good for the future, though, with that. Now let's move to the defensive side of the ball. I have them keeping a lot of edge rushers. Maybe too many. But I just think that all of these guys, if you let them go, they're going to be picked up by another team. So they bring in Carl Lawson from Cincinnati. Great pickup. They got him for the same price as like Trey Hendrickson. He's pretty young still, can develop for a while. So he's part of the future here. I really like Carl Lawson developing into a number one edge rusher, which is what he's going to start to be here. So I do like that. Then John Franklin Myers is an underrated player. Below him, he's always been pretty underrated. So he's pretty good. Then Vinny Curry, I didn't really understand bringing him in. He's been fine for the Eagles. He's had a few stints with them. He's been on the Bucs. He's just kind of there at this point. He's an aging veteran presence, so he could be a cut candidate, I guess. Kyle Phillips, I've never been a fan of, but he's kind of played well for the Jets, which is why I'm keeping it around, even though if it was me personally, I wouldn't do that. But I think that he will make the team here. And then Jabari Zuniga, who they took in, I think it was the third round last year. Barely got on the field last year. So it's crazy to see Bryce Huff, who I loved coming out of Memphis, but he was an undrafted player, got more time and more action than Jabari Zuniga. So it's interesting to see there. I think that Jabari still has some great tools and potential, but we need to see something from him this year. Otherwise, we're going to have Ja'Kai Polite 2.0. So, literally same school. So, Bryce Huff, as I said, is really good. I like him. Actually, I would personally say he's probably the fourth best edge rusher here. But then again, you could also include Ronald Blair, who they recently brought in from San Francisco. I think he'll stay on the team because they're going to want somebody that's familiar with the system, and he certainly is. And then they have Michael Dwimfor and Hamilcar Rashed, two undrafted rookies. I have them being cut because they already have so many players on the roster here at this position. They don't really need to make room on the practice squad because they have so many on the active roster. So now let's go to defensive tackles, where they have Quinnen Williams, who was kind of a safe choice a few years ago. It does remind me a lot of when they chose Leonard Williams. I think he's had a similar career turnout so far, where he's solid. You're never going to need to pick a replacement for him, but he's not an elite game wrecker, but he's good. So they're building something there. Sheldon Rankins was a pretty good signing. They didn't pay him too much to be a backup defensive tackle. That's pretty good value, so we'll take it there. Then Folorunsu Fatukasi is a pretty good third string. So he will be pretty good for them, I think, as a depth piece. And then Nathan Shepard, who they took relatively high a few years ago, has not honestly done that much, so this is a make-or-break-it year for them. Then Jonathan Marshall, they took, I think, in the 6th round this year. Maybe competes for that spot, but otherwise a practice squad player. And then I've never been a huge fan of Tanzil Smart. So this is a defensive tackle room that is pretty good overall. You're never going to complain about who they have here, but you could do a little better, but it's overall pretty good. I think this is up there. Defensive tackle is not a hugely important position anymore, but what they have is pretty good. So moving on to the linebackers, this is a unique position room because you have C.J. Mosley, who, even though he's played a little bit for this team, is basically an addition for them. He had an injury the first year he was there. Then he had an opt-out season last year, so he's coming back. He can play really well for them, I think. He could be a leader on this team. They paid him a pretty big contract, and he hasn't been on the field much. So now he's coming back in here. I think he can play pretty well for them this year. He can be a leader on this team. Then you're looking at Jared Davis, who I think they overpaid a little bit, but he can play pretty well for them as a backup here. He played okay in Detroit, a little disappointing for how high he was drafted, but he'll be a fine depth piece. Now, Blake Cashman I do want to talk about because he has had some injury issues, but when he's on the field, he's pretty good. Coming out of Minnesota, I liked him a lot. Thought it was a steal in the draft. He'll finally get some playing time this year. But he's a physical player that can make some good tackles. And then it's interesting to see the route they went for basically the rest of their depth, besides a few, where they're taking these almost converted safeties, turning them into linebacker, looking for some speed. I like it because they're bringing in some speed, and they're hoping at least one of the two does well. Between Jamian Sherwood and Hampton Nasruddin, Sherwood out of Auburn and Nasruddin out of Florida State, I'd say they're both played mostly safety, but in the box a lot as well. So I'm interested to see what Sherwood can do, and then Nasruddin is a hard hitter. I think both of them will be special teamers. I have both of them making the team, but otherwise you're going to have a competition. You're hoping one of them long-term could be a good player for you. And then I have Noah Dawkins making the practice squad. I've never been a Delshon Phillips guy, and then I have the rest of them being cut as well between Brendan White and Camilo Eifler. So, pretty good linebacker room, honestly, with Mosley coming back. And Cashman maybe looking to develop. So I do like this linebacker room a lot. So you're looking pretty good there. And then at corner, they have a whole ton of guys, and I have to say, this may be their worst position. Just overall, because I love the players they have. Like, don't get me wrong, because I love every single player on that top line, almost, except for the last one. But I just think each of them, you could tick down one spot. If you had a true number one corner, this would be great, because Austin could be a great 2, Hall would be a great 3, Guidry could be a good nickel. I think that would be really good. Obviously, like, Richard Sherman is still on the market, for example, but he just said today he wants to go to a contender, meaning it's not going to be the Jets. Sorry, Jets fan. But basically, Basan Austin could step in here and do really, really well as number one corner. But right now, I just think he needs some more time. I love Bryce Hall. I think he's really, really good. I liked him coming out of Virginia last year. Fell in the draft. I just think that he needs a little more time. Javelin Guidry, I like coming out of Utah. He went undrafted somehow. He can play really well in the slot. He's a small guy. But he can play pretty well. But once again, same thing. I'd rather have him start as a nickel that gets in a little less often than a full-time slot. You're hoping that between Jason Pinnock, Michael Carter II, and Brandon Echols that you hit on one of them. I have Pinnock and Carter making the roster. You're hoping you at least hit on one of them. And then Justin Hardy, I've never been a fan of, didn't understand that signing, but I have him staying on the team because of the signing. They gave him a 3-year, it's like 9 or 10. So they have some financial commitment to him, which is why I have him staying on the team. He'll be a special teams player. I personally would rather keep Corey Ballantyne, but the money just doesn't check out between those two. Even though I like Corey Ballantyne a lot, I just don't see him having room. Not a huge Bennett Jackson guy. You can just cut him. Lamar Jackson, not the Ravens quarterback, but the corner out of Nebraska last year, I think played okay last year for an undrafted player, and I think he still could develop into a pretty good player as well. So he's worth keeping around on the practice squad. Brandon Echols, they just picked this year, so give him a shot on the practice squad, and I think they can cut Zane Lewis and Isaiah Dunn. So like I said, I like the players they have at this position. I just don't know how much I like where they are. I think they're all ranked a little high, higher than they should be. Then to finish out the defense, we got the safety room, which might be their best room overall. They have Marcus May, who might be the best defensive player here. They lost Jamal Adams last year after trading him, but Marcus May is an absolute stud. They're figuring out the contract situation. Extend him at all costs. He's basically your defense right now. So definitely need to get him solidified there. And then Ashton Davis, I thought was a great pick. I didn't understand it at the time last year when they had a few other safeties. But with Jamal Adams out of the question, you're definitely going to want him there. I think he's a hard-hitting safety, can play pretty good zone, that can offer some great flexibility. And then they bring in LaMarcus Joyner, who's had an interesting career where he started as a safety for the Rams, played really good, so he got a big contract for the Raiders, but he played slot nickel corner for them, which I didn't love that move. I think he kind of converts back to safety here and plays a little bit of both. They're a little weak at corner, so he could play a little corner as well, but I think he lines up as a third safety. And then their most recent signing was bringing in Sherrod Niesman, who I like a good amount. I'm happy he's still in the league there. And because I literally, as I was making the slides for this video, was thinking they should sign a fourth safety, and they did. And then Saquon Hampton is currently on the PUP list, so I believe that he doesn't count towards the roster. If he does, he is, I think, practice squad eligible, so put him on the practice squad. Otherwise, you can cut him. Then JT Hassell, I've never been a fan of. Elijah Campbell did get on the active roster some last year, so he has the potential to play a little bit. And then Jordan Peters is an undrafted rookie who they are taking this year, and I don't think he makes a team. So this is perhaps one of their better defensive positions, so I like it a lot. Specifically, May and Davis are a great starting tandem there. So this is a pretty good safety room overall, perhaps the strength of their defense to close it out. Then let's look at their special teams here. Not particularly great, honestly, because I like their long snapper, but besides that, Sam Ficken is fine at kicker. He is just okay. I don't know. I don't think he should still be in the league, but he did okay for them last year. But before that, he kind of bounced around a bit. They brought in a rookie out of SMU who I just don't think will make the team either. They don't have room. Braden Mann out of Texas A&M is fine as a punter. Never has been great yet, but he's okay. And then, as mentioned, Thomas Hennessy's pretty good. So that's their special teams unit. And now I want to talk about their schedule prediction. So that was looking through the roster. Now let's talk about their schedule and the record prediction. So looking at their schedule, let's give a quick recap of how this works, right? So I have a system where I will give automatic wins and losses based on the rankings. We're still pretty low, so we're not going to have any wins yet. We might not for a while because I like to do what's called 50-50 games, where it's kind of unpredictable. Obviously, predicting games is hard. So what I like to do is take two games that are relatively similar. It could be two teams that are close in ranking. It could be two teams that maybe they're both away games. It could be two games that are home games, that type of thing. So I have a good amount of 50-50 games in this one. So basically, they start with the Sam Darnold revenge tour. That's going to be interesting to see. I'm as a 50 game there, splitting it with the Bengals. So basically what I'm saying there is they win one of the two games. Then you have the Patriots, Broncos, and Titans. The Broncos might be a winnable game, but otherwise I think the Patriots and Titans are going to be tough. The Falcons is winnable. They have an early bye, which I never like for team. I'd rather have a middle, ideally, but otherwise a late. I personally don't like early byes, so that doesn't help them. Then they play the Patriots again, who I think are really good. The Colts are a contender. The Bills are awesome this year. They're really tough. Dolphins, Texans, Eagles are all winnable games there. You get a 3-week stretch. Then you get the Saints. I think they lose. Dolphins, Jaguars, both winnable. And unfortunately, they closed it out with perhaps the two toughest games on their schedule being the Bucs and the Bills. So I'm splitting 4 games, basically is what I'm saying. So my prediction for them is 4-13. Makes sense. Last episode, I predicted the Texans would be 3-14. And I'll also say my rankings are based off of roster, not schedule. So figuratively, you could see a team that I have getting 6 wins above a team with 8 wins just due to their actual roster building structure versus just their schedule record. So then let's look at who I have winning their awards. I have the same player winning Offensive Player of the Year and Rookie of the Year being Zach Wilson. As mentioned, I think he's going to be really, really good this year. He's going to put up great stats. He's going to run the system well. He'll potentially be a pretty good fantasy option for you, maybe as an underrated player. I think he's going to really succeed, and just give it 2 or 3 years, and then the rest of the supporting cast will be developed enough to really put them over the top. So then Defensive Player of the Year, I have Marcus May winning it. I think you really have to choose between 3 options. It's definitely between, to me, Carl Lawson, CJ Mosley, and Marcus May. So as long as they get this whole contract thing figured out, Marcus May is my Defensive Player of the Year for them. Then I think my breakout player, you have some great options. I think Becton is already a little high to consider a breakout next year. But Denzel Mims is an option, for example. But I'm going to go with Blasson Austin. I think he's going to perform well, just get more playing time. I don't love him as a number 1 corner, but he's going to get the reps, which will make him improve, I guess. So that's why I'm saying the breakout there. And then the Rookie of the Year as mentioned, Zach Wilson, same player. So that's going to do it for this episode. As I said multiple times, this team is not elite right now, this very, very moment. But just give them a few years. You've got your quarterback figured out. You've got your receivers figured out pretty well, your supporting cast, and it's all going to work well. So this year, I don't think they're going to be elite, but they'll get another top draft choice. They'll get one more impact player, and then you're really looking to be a really, really good team. I mean, honestly, I love the direction. Like, compared to the last episode when I talked about the Texans, this is an example of this team actually has direction versus the Texans. This team is actually on the way up. So, thank you so much for watching this video. Sorry it's been a little bit since the last one. I'm finishing up school, so I'm trying for this year. So, I'm trying to just kind of close it out strong with that. And once we hit July, I'm going to try to get most of these out. I'll also do some non-football content. If you're a yearly viewer, you'll know what I'm talking about. But I am hopefully going to be able to get out some more videos in July. Thank you so much for watching this video and taking the time to watch this out of your day. And I will see you in the next one.